I'm 73 years old. Before you decide whether to keep listening, I need to warn you. What I'm about to say may make you uncomfortable. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's familiar. I'm saying this now because I don't have the option of waiting anymore, and because you still do. For most of my life, I believed something almost everyone believes. I believed life was something you prepare for. That real living comes later, after the work, after the sacrifices, after you've earned it. I followed that belief for decades without questioning it. And by the time I realized it was wrong, 52 years were already gone. That's why I'm telling you this. Not to sound wise, not to give advice, but because time is the one thing I no longer have much of, and it's the one thing you're spending right now, whether you realize it or not. For decades, I lived on autopilot. And I don't mean that metaphorically. I mean it literally. I woke up each morning already tired, already thinking about what needed to be done. Not what I wanted to do, what needed to be done. The alarm would go off. I'd get out of bed, get dressed, eat the same kind of breakfast, and step into the same routine without thinking about it. Days didn't feel chosen. They felt assigned. Work took most of my energy, not because I loved it, but because it demanded attention. Meetings, deadlines, expectations. One task flowed into the next, and every day felt productive enough to justify itself. I told myself this was responsibility, that this was what adults did. You keep moving, you don't complain, you handle things. And so I did. Outside of work, life was maintenance. Bills to pay, things to fix, errands to run. Weekends disappeared into chores and obligations. Even rest felt scheduled. Even relaxation felt rushed. I'd sit down at night, exhausted, scrolling or watching something meaningless, not because I enjoyed it, but because I didn't have the energy to think anymore. The dangerous part is that nothing felt broken. I wasn't in crisis, I wasn't miserable, and because of that, I never stopped to question anything. I thought unhappiness was the signal to change. I didn't realize that numbness was far more dangerous. When life feels tolerable, you don't interrupt it. You endure it. And endurance can quietly consume decades. Years passed like that. Promotions came, responsibilities grew. People told me I was doing well, that I was dependable, that I was successful, and every compliment pushed me deeper into the same path. It reinforced the idea that I was doing life correctly, even though I rarely felt present in it. I stopped noticing time. Birthdays came and went. Conversations became shorter. I listened just enough to respond, not enough to understand. I told myself I was busy, but the truth is, I had just stopped paying attention. I assumed there would be time later to slow down, to reflect, to live differently. I didn't realize I was postponing my own life. Not consciously, quietly, one ordinary day at a time. At 52, everything stopped, but not in a dramatic movie scene way. There were no final words, no sudden clarity, no sense that something meaningful was happening. One moment, I was doing exactly what I had done thousands of times before, focused on work that felt urgent only because I was used to treating it that way. The next moment, my body failed me. I remember feeling strange before it happened, a pressure I didn't recognize, a dizziness I tried to ignore. I told myself I just needed to sit down, that I was tired, that I'd deal with it after the meeting. That instinct to push through was so ingrained that even when my body was warning me, I treated it like an inconvenience. Then I woke up in a hospital bed. The room was quiet in a way I wasn't used to. No phone buzzing, no emails, no one asking me for anything. Machines beeped softly beside me. doing the work my body had almost stopped doing on its own. A doctor explained what had happened in calm, measured language. He told me I was lucky. That word stayed with me. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. I felt exposed. For the first time in decades, there was nowhere to go and nothing to do. No schedule to follow. No tasks to distract me. Just hours of lying there, staring at the ceiling, thinking. And that's when something shifted. Not all at once, but slowly, uncomfortably. I started asking questions I had avoided my entire life. Not big philosophical ones, simple ones. If this had ended today, what would I have actually lived for? What would people remember about me? And more importantly, what would I have missed? The answers weren't flattering. I didn't think about projects or achievements. I thought about absence, about how much of my life had been spent elsewhere, mentally, emotionally, while time quietly passed. I realized that if my life had ended there, it would have looked complete on paper and unfinished everywhere else. That moment didn't feel like a wake-up call. It felt like being caught in the middle of a life I had been postponing, suddenly aware that postponement has an expiration date, and lying there, surrounded by machines keeping me alive, I understood something that unsettled me deeply. I hadn't been choosing my life. I had been assuming I would get around to it. After I left the hospital, life didn't suddenly change. That's important to say. I didn't quit my job the next day. I didn't reinvent myself. I went back to my routines, back to the familiar structure, because habits don't disappear just because you've had a scare. But something inside me had shifted, and once that happens, you start noticing things you can't unsee. The regrets didn't arrive all at once. They surfaced quietly, usually in ordinary moments. I'd be sitting alone in the evening and suddenly remember a conversation I rushed through years earlier. A phone call I ignored because I was tired. A dinner I skipped because work felt more important at the time. None of these moments felt significant when I chose to miss them. That's what makes regret so cruel. It doesn't warn you while you're making the choice. It waits. I realized that the things I missed weren't dramatic milestones. They were small, human moments. Being fully present when someone wanted to talk. Sitting without checking the time. Asking a question and staying long enough to hear the real answer. I had traded those moments for efficiency, for productivity, for the comfort of staying busy. And once time passes, you don't get a chance to explain yourself to it. There were relationships I assumed would always be there. People I thought I'd reconnect with when things slowed down. I told myself we'd catch up later, that they'd understand. Some of them moved on. Some of them grew distant. Some of them died. And I never got to tell them what I should have said when it still mattered. I didn't regret failing. I regretted postponing. Postponing trips because it wasn't practical. Postponing conversations because they felt inconvenient. Postponing joy because it didn't fit neatly into my schedule. I had lived as if time were flexible, as if it would wait patiently for me to be ready. It doesn't. What hurt the most was realizing that many of these losses were invisible to everyone else. On the outside, my life looked stable, responsible, successful. But internally, I could see all the empty spaces where life could have been fuller, and there was no one to blame for that but me. Regret, I've learned, isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It sits quietly beside you and reminds you over and over of what can no longer be changed. And once you recognize it, you understand that the cost wasn't a single mistake. It was years of small choices that all leaned in the same direction, away from presence, away from what mattered, and toward a life that was always waiting to begin. Now, at 73, The picture is clear, in a way it never was when I was younger. Not because I'm smarter, and not because life finally explained itself to me, but because there's no more room for illusion. When you know you have more years behind you than ahead of you, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop pretending that uncomfortable truths will somehow soften with time. They don't. What I understand now is almost embarrassingly simple. The things I thought I was building my life around were never meant to carry that weight. Work was supposed to support life, not replace it. Responsibility was meant to create stability, not consume every ounce of attention. Success, as I chased it, asked for everything and gave very little back once the excitement wore off. For most of my life, I believed sacrifice was proof of seriousness. If something cost me time, energy, or presence, I assumed it must be important. I wore exhaustion like a badge. I told myself I was doing the right thing because it was hard. What I didn't realize was that difficulty and meaning are not the same thing. Some of the most meaningful parts of life are quiet, simple, and easily dismissed if you're not paying attention. It's too late for me to get those years back. That's not something I say with anger. It's just a fact. I can't go back and sit through conversations I rushed. I can't relive ordinary evenings I treated as unimportant. I can't reopen doors I assumed would always be unlocked. Time doesn't negotiate. Once it's spent, it's gone. And no amount of reflection changes that. What I can do now is live with intention in the time I have left. I choose differently. I slow down when I notice myself rushing for no real reason. I pay attention when someone is speaking, instead of thinking about what comes next. I say what needs to be said without waiting for the perfect moment. This doesn't make me happier in some dramatic way. It makes me present. And presence, I've learned, is the closest thing to peace we get. But I'm not telling you this so you can admire my clarity. Clarity that arrives this late is expensive. It's paid for with years you never get back. If you're listening to this and thinking that your situation is different, that you're under unique pressure, that you'll slow down once things are more stable, I want you to understand something gently but firmly. I thought the same thing. Almost everyone does. Life rarely gives you a clean pause. It doesn't wait until you're ready. It doesn't announce which moments will matter later. It just keeps moving. And you decide, often without realizing it, what you're willing to miss. And the danger isn't that you'll make one terrible decision. The danger is that you'll make thousands of small, reasonable ones that all point in the same direction. I'm not here to tell you to abandon your responsibilities or reject ambition. I'm telling you to notice what you're trading away in the process. Notice how often you say later. Notice how easily you postpone things that don't feel urgent but are deeply human. Notice how often you assume people, opportunities, and time itself will still be there when you finally turn toward them. For me, later became never more times than I'm comfortable admitting, and I didn't realize it until later was no longer an option. If you take anything from this, let it be this question. If your life continues exactly as it is now, if the pace doesn't slow and the priorities don't change, would you be at peace with where it leads? Not impressed. Not admired. At peace. I'm 73 years old. I didn't understand this at 30, or 40, or even 50. I understand it now because I have to. You don't have to wait for that moment. You don't need a scare or a loss to begin paying attention. But you do need honesty with yourself about how you're spending what you can never replace. This isn't a warning meant to frighten you. It's a reminder meant to ground you. The life you're waiting to live isn't somewhere ahead of you. It's unfolding quietly, in how you spend your days right now. And one day, whether you're ready or not, those days will be behind you. What you choose to do with that truth is entirely yours. I'll end with this, because it's the one thing I wish I had understood sooner. Most people don't waste their lives in obvious ways. They don't make dramatic mistakes. They don't choose the wrong path on purpose. They slowly drift. They stay busy. They do what's expected of them. And one day they look back and realize they were present for very little of it. I don't feel regret because my life went badly. I feel regret because it went by quietly while I was waiting for the right moment to really step into it. That moment never announced itself. It never arrived fully formed. It was always hidden inside ordinary days I thought didn't matter. If you're listening to this and feeling unsettled, that's not a bad thing. Discomfort is often the first sign that you're paying attention. You don't need to change everything at once. You don't need a perfect plan. But you do need to stop assuming that time will always be available when you're finally ready. I'm 73 years old. I lost 52 years before I understood this. I don't get to recover them. But you still have today. And today is not small. It's not insignificant. It's where your life is actually happening. Don't wait for a clearer sign. Don't wait for things to calm down. Don't wait until it feels safe or convenient. Pay attention now. Choose presence now. Because one day, sooner than you think, now will be all you have left to look back on. That's all I wanted to say.